I need some traction. You need some traction.
Hey everyone, Lloyd Lobo here, co-founder at Boast AI. Today's Traction webinar is brought to you by Boast AI Launch Academy in partnership with BCF Ventures, Founder Institute, Lazaridis Institute, and Growth Blazers. Great topic today here. Annie Scranton runs Pace PR. She's been a solopreneur, started out of her apartment and turned it into a multi-million-dollar business with clients spanning across the globe. She's celebrating her birthday. So happy birthday, Annie.
Thank you.
Awesome. And she's celebrating with us by sharing 5 tips to build thought leadership to grow your brand. And it's an often ignored topic. I often get asked on like, hey, what's the next growth hack? Everyone's looking for a silver bullet, but like building a brand that's long-term enduring takes time. And one of the key things that gets ignored is thought leadership. So Annie is going to share all about that. Prior to Pace, Annie worked for a decade as a seasoned television producer, booking for major networks like CNN, Fox, CNBC, MSNBC, ABC, etc. So she knows her stuff. She's been featured all over the map. So if somebody knows how to build thought leadership and get your brand out there, it's Annie. Awesome. Without further ado, Annie, you have a great set of slides. Happy birthday again, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Today's presentation is basically trying to empower you all to you hold, the key to building your business. You're the expert, but we're going to give you some tips today, 5 techniques that are going to help you grow your business by really developing out your thought leadership. So a little bit about me, as the kind introduction stated, I spent the first 10 years or 8 years rather of my career in television. So I worked mostly at national network and cable TV networks for those years. I was what's known as a booker. So there's sort of a litany of hierarchy amongst producers on a specific show and at different networks. But I was responsible for actually finding the guests who would come on and be interviewed by the anchor of the show. So I had to find interesting story ideas, and then I had to find somebody who was a good talker. That's, the TV lingo, someone who's a good talker who could make heads or tails of the story and be a compelling guest on air. So during my time, I worked for many different anchors like Dan Sawyer, Deborah Norville, Dan Abrams, Donnie Deutsch, Aaron Burnett, and a lot more, and had a little bit of on-camera experience, but always found it more interesting to be behind the scenes, sort of hobnobbing in the green room and meeting people that way. So I transitioned over to PR 11 years ago now, which is crazy. It actually kind of started on a lark. I'll tell the story quickly. I was working in TV, and the show I was working on got canceled. And so I was like 29 at the time. So of course I called my mom crying and was like, what am I going to do? But then I sent an email to everyone I know and said, I need a job. And I got an email back that changed the entire course of my life. It was from a publicist who I had developed a relationship with, booking his clients on CNBC. And he said, I don't think you have any formal PR experience, but if you could help me and get my client booked on any show on CNBC, I'll pay you $500. And I said, well, okay, let me try. And I took the info to my friend who was booking for a dayside show at CNBC, and she thought he was great. And like that, it kind of, that was my light bulb moment. So that was the moment that I realized what my sort of unique currency was. And it's really the fact that I not only very, very intimately understood the nuances between the networks and the different shows, but that I had the connections, right, to facilitate and make those interviews happen. And I'm telling you this because it's going to dovetail into one of the sections on personal branding that I'll talk about. But that's just a little bit about how Pace PR came to be. Basically, I freelanced for a couple of years while I still worked in TV. And then 11 years ago in May, we will celebrate our anniversary. So we are based in New York City. We have offices, albeit virtually right now, in DC and LA. And Pace PR is a full service public relations firm, and thought leadership is a big part of what we do with almost all of our clients. So what is thought leadership? It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, but basically it's a type of content marketing, personal branding, call it what you will, where you tap into the talent, experience, and passion of the leader of your company. So whether that's the founder, the CEO, the president, it could be a few different people, but it's basically putting that person or persons out in the world in a constructive way that is going to relay her or his opinion. That is thought leadership. It's basically saying, well, here is a big story that's trending in my world in startup technology or in my world of, politics and or whatever it is. And I am going to look at this story, process the information, and then come at it with a point of view and putting that out there in a constructive way. That's really what thought leadership is all about. So today, talking about 5 ways to use thought leadership to grow your business. And the 5 ways that I've come up with is to really develop your own personal brand, dedicating time each day to LinkedIn, pitching your ideas then for opinion pieces, newsjacking. Some of you may not know what that is, but I will explain. And then basically thinking of your big goals and how the media can help you to achieve them. So a lot of this obviously dovetails in what I do professionally in public relations, but hopefully you'll find it useful. So why you need personal branding. So simply put, personal branding is your calling card. It's your 30-second elevator pitch. And to be successful, you have to stand out. Everyone in this virtual room is trying to be a startup success, is trying to get to that next level. But without knowing what makes you and your skill set unique, you can and likely will be overlooked. So whether you call it personal branding or your core messaging and your elevator pitch, you have to be able to articulate who you are, why should the person listening care, what makes you different and better than all the rest, and basically what's in it for the other person who's listening. What's the ROI? I think that's a piece that people really forget a lot of times. You get that person on the phone who just starts droning on, and you're like, why should I care about this? Just keep that in mind when you're talking to people in general. It'll usually make for a more efficient and productive conversation. So an elevator pitch, this is really a short overview of your business, your products, or your services. So it is a very powerful tool. Obviously, we all watch Shark Tank. We see the elevator pitches that they do in front of the sharks, but you'd be surprised how many people actually can't articulate succinctly what their business does or why it's killer, why it's so great. So it's an important starting point, really. So, the steps to writing this elevator pitch is: who are you? What do you do? What's your target audience? What's your unique point of view? What's next also, because that is an important part of thought leadership. It's not just owning and being the best at what you do now, but it's thinking of what's next. Where is all of this heading? Where is the industry heading? And then basically, what's the attention grabbing hook? So you might be sitting here being like, well, my company does great. I don't need personal branding. I don't even know what my personal brand is. Everybody has a personal brand. If you are on the internet, you have a personal brand. So you do, but it's really a situation of, do you want to control that narrative of what your personal brand is? Or do you want people to come to their own conclusions based on what they're seeing out there? So it's really a critical time. I mean, we've all seen how volatile the media is, how people that we thought were, amazing and doing great jobs, things get out, they can't control the narrative, they don't understand their own personal brand, and they can really fall from grace. So, if you don't take charge to build your own brand, somebody is going to do it for you. So you might be thinking, what's my personal brand? So when people ask me this, I always say, I can get you on TV. As my short and simple elevator pitch, you would be surprised or maybe not, of how many people hear me say that and their ears sort of perk up and they're like, oh, tell me more. You could get me on TV? What do you mean? So it's a way to sort of just start that conversation. And then, of course, I say, well, I worked in TV for 8 years. Now I transitioned to my own company on the other side of the equation. And because of my past experience working at all these networks and knowing and being friends with many different producers, it's allowed me to have a direct line in to help getting our clients booked who normally wouldn't get booked. So that's our personal brand. And yeah, that was 11 years ago. And today we have over 50 clients. We have 10 full-time employees, 5 part-time. And it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. So some steps to figure out how to develop your own personal brand. Figure out who you are and what your business is. What do you excel at, but also what do you enjoy doing or what don't you enjoy doing? These are all really important questions to ask yourself. I think also something that was advice given to me that I think is so great is ask your colleagues, ask your former colleagues, ask your friends, ask your family. Ask them to be brutally honest and say, what do you think I'm good at? What did you like about working with me? What did you not like working about me? Like, what did I do really well? What did you wish I was better at? All of those things are sort of like research, that's going to help you to figure out what is your personal brand. And that really is going to help you define yourself as a thought leader. It's also just so important to know your audience, and likely also doing research on other thought leaders within your space. That's so important because you need to kind of be up on trends and be up on how others are marketing themselves. You don't want to necessarily be a copycat, but you might get ideas. It might spark a way for you to think of how you can start getting yourself out there. And lastly, it's not like you're going to leave this presentation and say, I've got it. I know what my personal brand is. It's going to take time. You're going to, need to think on it. It's not going to come overnight. And it's something that I also think evolves with time. I should probably update my elevator pitch because my firm does so much more than just get people on TV. We work in all forms of traditional media. We help our clients get speaking engagements or get op-eds placed, et cetera, et cetera. But, just to know that it's a process. It's not something that necessarily is linear, point A to point B. So the second piece of advice, something that's worked really, really well for me, is to dedicate time each day to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn for me is like the holy grail of social media. First of all, the more time you spend on LinkedIn, connecting with people, seeing what they're posting, sending messages, the more opportunities you're going to have in general to expand your network and to meet new potential clients, investors, business partners, whatever it is that you're sort of in the market for. But it's just it's almost like a living resume, LinkedIn, and it's a place where you could go to humble brag about accomplishments, things you're proud of when you sign a new client or you get a new contract, and you don't have to feel like weird about it. That's what LinkedIn is for. But when you take the time to optimize your profile and post actively, you're just reaching so many people in one fell swoop that, there's not really another way that I found to do it as constructively as LinkedIn. So, there's all sorts of way to optimize your profile and to sort of, set different settings on it, things like that. But I try personally to take about 15 minutes every single day to either post something new. I post probably like twice a week to post something new. But also another piece of advice I learned is that if you, in order for your post to show up in more people's algorithms, you actually have to spend time liking and commenting on other people's posts. So I do that a lot too. And sometimes I'll comment, but sometimes I'll send folks a direct message and it just starts a conversation. Like you'd be surprised, like people I haven't talked to in a really long time. And then I'll send them a message and say, oh, I saw you posted something on your new podcast. I listened to it. I loved it. They'll reply back to me and be like, oh, thanks. I also saw that you've been doing X, Y, and Z. So people are paying attention to LinkedIn, but like anything, it's kind of a practice. You have to do it often in order to really reap the benefits. It can't just be like a once in a while type of thing. So the third way that I was thinking about using thought leadership to grow your business is to consider pitching your ideas for opinion pieces. So this is obviously part of what we do at my firm, but anybody can pitch an op-ed, as long as it's written well and is worthy of being pitched. But you can think of this kind of as an extension of LinkedIn posting. Like a lot of times on LinkedIn, if there is a specific moment in the media that has like a PR spin to it, I will write almost like a little mini op-ed. Maybe it'll be like 200 words or something on LinkedIn that'll just be like a short assessment of how I see the PR spin of this moment in the media, whatever it will be. When you're pitching an op-ed, obviously it has to be crafted in a way that opinion pieces are written in. But it's kind of just taking that initial thought and then putting it together in the correct format for an opinion piece. But it's a great way to get your message out there. And all of everything I'm talking about now is hopefully with the goal in mind of reaching an audience that you previously haven't been able to get in front of, and there's all sorts of ways to do that, whether it's sales or direct marketing or advertising. But, thought leadership and then taking that thought leadership and turning it into an opinion piece can be a really valuable tool. And so it shows that you have knowledge on a topic, and it's really, I think, can be, if it winds up getting placed at a really highly regarded media outlet, it can be really essential for building your brand. Most people, I would think, if you're saying, oh, I got my opinion piece published in the New York Times, check it out, they're going to be like, oh, okay, Annie's legit. She had an op-ed in the New York Times. I mean, that is quite difficult, but you can start small, and it's just a way that, is, it's just one avenue, for kind of putting yourself out there. So as I was saying earlier, another phrase, newsjacking, this is another area that I thought of in terms of using thought leadership. So this is what we do on a day-to-day basis. Basically, newsjacking is when there is a big story in the news and you say to yourself, you know what? I could go on TV as an expert commentator, or subject matter expert talking about this news story. That's basically what newsjacking is, but it could also be lending quotes to a print or digital reporter, or going on a podcast or a radio show to talk about the story of the day. So what do I mean by that? When Meghan Markle's interview was in the news, if, I was somebody who had, covered entertainment, covered the royals or whatever, or had any affiliation with that, that would be a moment where it would be appropriate for me to pitch myself over there. So, if there's some big, merger in the tech space, or there's just a new product launch that's getting a ton of buzz, if you're in an industry where it's the same industry, or, you even have a smaller company, but you can go on and discuss it, that would be the time to pitch yourself. So this obviously means like putting yourself out there in a much bigger way, and you have to be really vulnerable and ready for it, especially if you're going on television, because, there's a lot that goes into making sure you give a good TV interview. But it's just another way for you to, even when you're doing your LinkedIn posting, to start thinking about, okay, what are the topic areas where maybe I should start to think of myself as a thought leader, as a subject matter expert. It's just gonna get your mind thinking like that, and you can start small, certainly with either local news or trade publications, things of that nature, which I would be happy to go more into if people have questions. But it's definitely something to consider. And then lastly, I don't think people think enough about the media as a way to help them grow their business, but it really is pretty powerful. And if you're smart about it and you think strategically, the media can help you to achieve your goals, on face value, simply because it's going to absolutely lead to an increase in visits to your website, social media, etc. There's nothing that's going to raise the legitimacy and the credibility of you and your brand than if you go on CNBC or you get featured in TechCrunch or the Wall Street Journal. That just holds a lot of weight to basically everybody. And I've had client after client after client who's told me that they've put the interview from CNBC front and center on their homepage of their website, or they send out their recent media appearances in their digital newsletter, or they invest in SEO to optimize the media appearances. It really makes a big difference. And I've had many clients tell me that that's how new clients found them, is because they saw a video of them and they decided to call them up. Or a lot of clients also say that sometimes the media appearances has been sort of like the little competitive edge when a prospective client is kind of in between going with one company or another. I just think it's a way that can definitely give you that edge. But it's also a way where if you have a business or a service that is doing something really cool, really unique, that's helping a lot of people, there are ways to get that story told in the media. Certainly, I would just say that it all has to come back to, why would the person reading about it in the newspaper or watching on it TV, why would they care about it, basically? And so that's kind of always to keep in mind. Working with the media is different than, buying a commercial advertisement, or an ad in a newspaper that's very overt, and people know you paid for it. With the media, you don't get paid when you go on, CNN, or when you get quoted in the New York Times. More times than not, people are paying a firm like mine to get them in the media. But I think it's just a testament to the fact that the media is really powerful, seeing as how we've had clients who have been clients of ours for years and have worked with us month after month after month, because they just recognize the value of having that sustained presence in the media. It's harder to quantify it. Media, is more of a cumulative effect, but it certainly can make a big difference. So that is my presentation. I hope you guys have Q&A. And if you want to get in touch, here's my info to do so.
Zunti says, our local media has been completely captured by big tech. When we in small tech send out our news, we get like nothing. So how do you cut through the clutter and the noise to get like the media to cover you?
Well, I would say that as a first step, what I would do is when you see a local news story on Facebook or Slack or whatever it is, pay attention to that report, that package, that news package. See if the reporter interviewed anybody in that piece as a subject matter expert, and then ask yourself, could I be that person in another upcoming piece? And then I would say to email the specific reporter, especially local news. It's okay to reach out to the reporter directly. For national news, I would try to go through more of a booker or a booking producer. But in local news, I would reach out to the reporter and say something like, I watched your story last night where you reported on Facebook's earnings. Really loved the piece, great insights. We run a much smaller social media company in town, but I'm available if you ever need someone to give sound bites for your packages. And likewise, if you or any of your colleagues ever shine a light on local businesses, I would love the opportunity to meet you or to send you more information. Reporters are like people. Some are really cool and kind and get right back to you. And some you could send 10,000 emails to and they will never reply. So it's a process. That's why people hire us and pay us money, is to do it for them, because it takes a lot of, it's not hard. It just takes a lot of time and effort and follow up. And I would also recommend to follow those reporters on social media, because, everybody kind of, it blends their personal and their professional lives. And if you are able to, glean from social media that the reporter is a mom to twins and your product is something specifically designated to help moms with twins, that will just give you information and another way to reach out in a more meaningful way. Because it's all about getting them to respond. And like the other thing just to keep in mind too, is that the media, when you're trying to get yourself or your story or your company featured in the media, it's not a 50-50 relationship, like not even close. The media doesn't owe you anything. They're not obligated to cover you. Really, I always say, some people don't agree with me, but I say it's like a 99 to 1% interview. 99% of the time I'm working, I'm hustling, I'm trying to get my clients featured. And the 1% I get back is when they're actually on air and the story is running. And then it's, a huge success. So just to remember the persistence, but having that personal touch is so important.
What is your advice for those in PR who work in a highly regulated industry that is also like B2B company and isn't a household name?
Well, I mean, it's hard. First of all, it's hard. If this person wants to email me separately to have a more in-depth conversation, I'd be happy to just spend some time and talk it through. But when something is heavily regulated or much more B2B, the first thing we do is go to more of the trade publications, that are associated with the field and the industry. This is a good time though, or way to go the op-ed route, because, it's like, you may not get a big paper or tech site or whatever to cover your company if it's very niche and like not that interesting. But having your CEO write an op-ed on a trend within the industry is definitely a way to kind of get them out there a little bit more. I would also say too, like, if there's a way to get clients of the company you're representing to be interested and able and available to talk to the media about the way that using this service has impacted their business for the better, or using this service has caused my business to grow 20% year over year in revenue. Getting some of that third party endorsement is really important and critical when you're pitching, because then you're saying to a reporter, like, here, talk to an actual person who's used the product, as opposed to, oh, just take my word for it. This is, a cool service.
Awesome. Here, a question from Miriam is, when putting out content, particularly for really innovative tech ideas, how do you balance giving a full picture, and how do you not give away the secret sauce so the competitors are not working on it?
Well, I hope I'm understanding the question correctly, but one thing that we do sometimes is, like, try to group our client into a pitch where it's like 5 ways to work more productively from home. And like, our client will be one thing, like one way. It's a new data service that will help you be more productive on email, whatever. But then we'll include totally unrelated, thing, like maybe a special, seat or cushion for your seat, or something that's like, or a meditation app, or something that's not competitive at all with what we're pitching, but still makes sense in a broader context. So that's just one idea. I hope I understood the question correctly.
Definitely. What tips do you have for someone who was a thought leader in industry that has died out and wants to reestablish?
Well, I mean, I would try to figure out, what are the skill sets that you mastered when you were working on daily deals for, all that time? And are any of those skill sets that you've mastered transferable, into the new market? Because if it's that you had great customer service? Is it that you had extremely fast response time? Is it that you were able to, cultivate really strong relationships with your customers? Those are all skills that can transfer to most businesses. So I would just try to, or just thinking, okay, well, I grew this business, I scaled it by X%, what are the techniques that you could take from doing that and transfer it over to the new business?
Aldo asks, what are some roadblocks your company faced and how did you overcome them? Has your company ever missed the mark? So I'm more asking you as a founder kind of thing.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, yeah, we've overcome a lot of roadblocks. I mean, most recently the pandemic, we definitely came out thriving on the other side of it. But certainly a year ago, I was shedding clients at a clip I had never seen before. So it was quite scary. I would say one of the biggest hurdles in the beginning and even still sometimes that I struggle with is getting a really good handle on our pricing. When I was first starting out, I kind of just, very much lowballed myself because I wanted to get the business and I wanted to get my foot in the door. And I still think that's okay because you need clients to start getting more clients and to show success and to show that you're good at what you do. But I think knowing your value and knowing your worth is something that is super important and something that I definitely had to struggle with and to overcome. And, I would just say also just, it's been now that there's 10 of us full-time and 5 part-timers, it's definitely become impossible for me to manage my staff without relying on other senior members of my team to help me manage the staff. And certainly knowing I could have done that a little bit sooner, I think. So knowing when as a founder is the right time to bring in help and to kind of spread it out a little bit is scary, but it's something that's necessary. So just kind of realizing it's okay to do that sooner rather than later, and actually may wind up helping you grow more if you bring in help, as opposed to thinking I can keep doing it all myself. I don't want to spend money on another employee or something like that.
Awesome. How do you cut through the noise in a crowded industry? Like, what are the top steps you would do in a crowded industry? Like, give you an example, like maybe accounting.
Yeah, we represented an accountant. So I can talk about it from the media perspective of working with him. Sure, there's 700 million accountants out there. How do you make your guy stand out? The simple answer is that most accountants are not doing anything that unique or unusual or compelling. But it's all about in the way we worked with our client, it was all about the newsjacking element, 100%. Because clearly this past year with COVID and the PPP coming out, that had tax implications and has tax implications for business owners. So we would just every day scour the news, read all the headlines, see what new was happening with PPP, and then pitch him to talk about it in the context of what do you need to know when you're getting ready to file your taxes. And we were able to get him on all sorts of national news and quoted in all sorts of big outlets that really truly drove business to his firm. So if it's a boring industry and there's nothing that is that crazy happening, I would say newsjack, or also see what trends are happening with amongst your own clientele. Are you getting more and more, women coming in asking about one particular question that relates to their taxes or, something, see what are the trends that are happening and then see if you could turn that into a bigger story to tell.
Any final piece of advice you'd like to share?
I think if you're thinking seriously about thought leadership, you have to every day start thinking of yourself as that thought leader. And every day when you read a story about where that's relevant to your industry, start thinking about, well, what would I say if I was quoted in this article? What is my point of view on that? And then it's like anything else, like you have to put the work in if you want to actually make it happen. So start with just, 10 minutes a day, just even if you don't do anything, just think about it, and I think that's the way to make things start to happen.
Awesome. Fantastic. have a wonderful birthday and weekend coming up, and enjoy yourself. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good one.
I need some traction.